The dusty wind swept through Green River, Wyoming Territory, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and distant rain as Katherine Rose stumbled through the small wooden chapel's heavy door, her chest heaving with barely contained sobs. It was August 1878, and Katherine had just buried her younger brother Thomas beside their parents in the cemetery behind the whitewashed building. The fever had taken him in 3 days, leaving her utterly alone in the world at 22 years old. Her calico dress was still spotted with the dust from the graveyard, and her dark auburn hair had come loose from its pins, falling in waves around her tear-streaked face. She had sent the few townspeople who had attended the burial away, needing solitude in her grief, needing to speak with God without the awkward condolences of near strangers watching her break apart. The chapel was simple inside, with rough-hewn pews and a plain wooden cross hanging above a modest altar. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the single stained glass window, casting colored patterns across the floorboards. Katherine made her way to the front pew and collapsed onto her knees, pressing her forehead against her clasped hands. She had no words at first, only the raw ache that threatened to split her open. Thomas had been 17, full of dreams about heading to California, about striking gold or maybe becoming a rancher. Now he was nothing but still flesh beneath the Wyoming soil. Their parents had died 2 years prior when their wagon overturned crossing a swollen creek, and Katherine and Thomas had clung to each other through that loss. She had promised them she would take care of him. She had failed. The tears came hot and fast, streaming down her face as she finally found her voice. "I do not understand your plan," she whispered hoarsely. "I tried so hard to keep him safe. I did everything I could. Why would you take him from me? Why would you leave me with no one?" Her shoulders shook with silent weeping. The emptiness stretched before her like the endless prairie, vast and terrifying. She owned nothing but the small plot of land where her family's homestead cabin stood, barely held together against the elements. Thomas had been learning to work the land properly, had been growing strong enough to help her make something of it. Without him, she did not know how she would survive the coming winter. "Please," she breathed. "Please give me a sign that there is still a reason to keep going. I feel so lost. I am so tired of being alone." The chapel door creaked open behind her, and Katherine stiffened, embarrassment flooding through her. She had wanted privacy for this moment of raw vulnerability. She started to rise, to wipe her face and pretend at composure, but heavy footsteps approached slowly down the center aisle. She turned slightly, vision still blurred with tears, and saw the silhouette of a tall man removing his hat. He moved with a quiet respect, as though aware he was intruding on sacred ground. When he reached the pew directly behind hers, he did not sit. Instead, he lowered himself to his knees beside her, bowing his head. Katherine's breath caught in her throat. Through her tears, she could see him more clearly now. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-bronzed skin and sandy brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. His face was lean and weathered from outdoor living, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble. He wore dusty riding clothes and well-worn boots, and his hat rested on the pew beside them, revealing the tan line across his forehead. He did not speak, did not look at her. He simply knelt there in companionable silence, his own hands folded in prayer. There was something infinitely gentle about the gesture, a wordless acknowledgement of her pain without attempting to diminish it with empty platitudes. Katherine found herself unable to look away. She had seen this man around Green River over the past few months, always from a distance. He worked at the Garrison ranch outside town, one of the cowboys who brought cattle to market, and occasionally stopped at the general store for supplies. She had never spoken to him, had never even been close enough to see the blue-gray color of his eyes or the small scar above his left eyebrow. But here he was, kneeling beside a stranger in her darkest moment, offering the only comfort that mattered: presence. They remained that way for several long minutes, the only sound the whisper of wind against the chapel walls and Catherine's gradually steadying breathing. The storm of her grief had not passed, but something about not being alone in it made it slightly more bearable. She felt the weight of her sorrow shift, becoming something she might actually be able to carry. Finally, the cowboy spoke, his voice low and rough, as though he did not use it often. "I am sorry for your loss, miss. I saw the burial from the ridge. Your brother, was it?" Katherine nodded, not trusting her voice yet. "That is a hard thing," he continued quietly. "The hardest thing, I reckon, losing family." Something in his tone suggested he spoke from experience. Katherine turned to look at him fully and found him watching her with eyes that held depths of understanding. This was not a man offering practiced condolences. This was someone who knew the particular shape of grief. "I have no one left now," Katherine whispered. "He was the last." The cowboy's expression softened with compassion. "I know how that feels. Lost my own kin some years back. My parents and my sister, all to cholera when I was about your age. Felt like the world had ended, like there was no point in the sun coming up anymore." "What did you do?" Katherine asked, desperate for any guidance, any suggestion that survival was possible. "I kept breathing," he said simply. "Kept putting one foot in front of the other. Some days that was all I could manage. But the days added up, and eventually the weight got a little easier to carry. It never goes away entirely, but you learn how to live alongside it instead of being crushed beneath it." Katherine absorbed his words, finding an odd comfort in his honesty. He was not telling her the pain would disappear, or that time would heal all wounds. He was telling her the truth. It would be hard, but it was survivable. "I am being terribly rude," she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "You are being so kind, and I do not even know your name." "Cole Garrison," he said, offering her a small, sad smile. "And you are Katherine Rose. I have seen you at the store a few times. Your brother always talked about you, said you were the strongest person he knew." Fresh tears sprang to Catherine's eyes at the mention of Thomas. "You knew him?" "A little. He came by the ranch sometimes, asking questions about cattle and horses. Good kid. Curious. Wanted to learn everything about ranching." Cole's voice was gentle. "He talked about how you kept the homestead running after your parents passed, how you taught yourself to hunt and fix the roof and everything else you needed to survive. He admired you something fierce." Katherine had not known Thomas visited the Garrison ranch. The revelation brought both comfort and fresh sorrow. Her little brother had been trying to learn skills to help her, to become the man of the family they needed, and now he never would. "I do not feel strong right now," she admitted. "I feel like I am made of glass and the slightest touch will shatter me." Cole nodded slowly. "Strength is not about never breaking. It is about what you do with the pieces when you do." They fell into silence again, but it felt different now. Less like the hollow quiet of isolation, and more like the peaceful stillness of shared understanding. Katherine found herself grateful beyond measure that this near stranger had walked into the chapel, had chosen to kneel beside her instead of leaving her alone with her anguish. The light through the stained glass window had shifted, painting them both in shades of amber and gold. Katherine realized she should probably return to her homestead, should begin the overwhelming task of sorting through Thomas's few possessions and figuring out how to move forward. But she could not quite bring herself to leave the sanctuary yet, could not quite face the empty cabin waiting for her. "May I ask you something?" Cole said, breaking the silence. "Of course." "You have anyone, Friends, neighbors, anyone who can help you through the next few days." Katherine shook her head. "We kept mostly to ourselves. The people here in Green River have always been kind enough, but we never got close to anyone. Thomas and I were enough for each other." Cole's brow furrowed with concern. "That is not good, miss. Grief is not meant to be borne entirely alone. And besides that, you have practical concerns. The homestead, your livestock if you have any, preparing for winter." "I know," Katherine said, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "I have been trying not to think about it, one problem at a time. You have chickens, do not you? And I think I recall Thomas mentioning a milk cow." "Yes. Bessie the cow and about 8 hens. I need to get back to them soon, actually. I have been gone most of the day." Cole stood, extending a hand to help Katherine to her feet. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip steady. "Let me ride out with you. Make sure everything is secure for the night. It is the least I can do." Katherine wanted to refuse, to insist she could manage on her own, but the truth was she would be grateful for the company. The thought of returning to that silent cabin, of seeing Thomas's empty bed and his few belongings scattered about, filled her with dread. Having someone else there, even briefly, might make it bearable. "That is very kind of you," she said softly. "Thank you." They walked together down the aisle and out into the fading afternoon light. Cole's horse, a sturdy gray gelding, was hitched to the rail outside. Katherine's own mare, a dappled brown she had named Willow, waited patiently beside it. The ride to Katherine's homestead took about 20 minutes, following the well-worn trail that wound through sagebrush and prairie grass. The land here was beautiful in its own stark way, all rolling hills and endless sky, but it was unforgiving to those who did not respect it. Katherine had learned that lesson well over the past 2 years. Cole rode beside her, not pushing conversation but not distant either. Occasionally, he would point out something, a hawk circling overhead or the tracks of pronghorn in the dust. Small observations that kept Katherine anchored in the present moment, instead of spiraling into worry about the future. When they crested the final hill and the homestead came into view, Katherine felt her chest tighten. The cabin was small, just 2 rooms, with a sagging porch and a roof she and Thomas had patched with whatever materials they could find. The barn was even more precarious, leaning slightly to one side. A small garden plot showed the remains of summer vegetables, and the chicken coop was little more than scrap wood and wire. It looked, Katherine realized with a sinking heart, exactly like what it was. The desperate holding of people who had been barely surviving. If Cole thought anything of the homestead's condition, he did not show it. He simply dismounted and helped Katherine down, then immediately set about checking on the animals. The chickens were fine, scratching around their enclosure. Bessie the cow lowed mournfully from the barn, clearly ready for milking. "I can handle Bessie while you see to the chickens," Cole offered. "If that is all right with you." Katherine nodded gratefully. Milking was a task she found particularly difficult, as Bessie had always responded better to Thomas's patient hands than to her own frustrated attempts. She scattered feed for the hens and collected the few eggs they had laid, trying not to think about how these were the same chores she and Thomas had done together just days ago. He had always made them more bearable with his constant chatter, telling her about things he had read in the old newspapers they occasionally acquired, or plans he had for improving the homestead. When she entered the barn, she found Cole had already settled onto the milking stool, his forehead pressed against Bessie's flank as his hands worked in a steady rhythm. The cow stood placidly, clearly content with his practiced touch. "You are good with animals," Katherine observed. "Spent most of my life around them," Cole replied without pausing in his work. "Cattle, horses, Worked on farms and ranches since I was about 12 years old. Animals are often easier to understand than people. I wish I had your skill. Bessie barely tolerates me. She is just used to your brother. Give her some time and lots of patience. She will come around. Katherine leaned against the barn door frame, watching Cole work. There was something soothing about the rhythmic sound of milk hitting the pail, about the quiet competence Cole displayed. She found her thoughts drifting, imagining what it might be like to have someone like this around regularly, someone who could help with the tasks that had always been so difficult for her. The thought brought a flush of shame. Thomas was barely in the ground, and here she was thinking about her own needs, her own loneliness. As if sensing her distress, Cole looked up. You are allowed to think about the future, you know, about how you are going to manage. That is not disrespectful to your brother. That is survival, and Thomas would want you to survive. Katherine blinked back fresh tears. How did you know what I was thinking? Because I thought the same things after my family died. Felt guilty every time I laughed or enjoyed a sunset or thought about anything other than grief. But the dead do not need our suffering. They just need to be remembered, and you can remember your brother while also taking care of yourself. He finished with Bessie and stood, carrying the full pail carefully. You have got enough milk here for a few days if you keep it cool. Do you have a spring house or a cellar? A cellar, Katherine said. Not much, but it stays cool enough. They walked together to the cabin, and Katherine felt her steps slow as they approached. Cole seemed to sense her reluctance because he paused at the porch steps. Would you like me to go in first? Make sure everything is in order, Katherine shook her head. She had to face this eventually. No, but thank you. I would appreciate it if you would come in, though. I am not quite ready to be alone yet. Of course. The cabin's interior was dim and close, smelling of herbs and the remains of the morning's fire. Katherine had always tried to keep it tidy, but without Thomas's help, things had begun to pile up during the days of his illness. Dishes sat unwashed in the basin, and clothes needed mending. Thomas's bed in the corner was still rumpled from when she had carried him to the wagon for his final journey to town, and the doctor who could not save him. Cole set the milk pail down and busied himself with lighting a lamp, giving Katherine space to process. She stood frozen in the center of the room, overwhelmed by the physical evidence of her brother's absence. Would you like me to help straighten things up a bit? Cole asked quietly. Sometimes keeping your hands busy helps. Katherine nodded, grateful beyond words. Together they worked in companionable silence. Cole washed dishes while Katherine folded clothes. He disposed of spoiled food from the cupboard while she swept the floor. Slowly, the cabin began to feel less like a shrine to grief and more like a functional space again. When they finally settled at the small table with cups of coffee Katherine had brewed, the sun was setting outside, painting the Wyoming sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. I should probably head back to the ranch, Cole said, though he made no move to rise. But I do not like the idea of you being out here completely alone, especially not tonight. I will be fine, Katherine assured him, though the words felt hollow. I have been alone before. Not like this, you have not. Not with this kind of grief. Cole hesitated, then continued. I could bed down in the barn if you would like, just for tonight. That way if you need anything, I am close by. The offer should have seemed improper, but all Katherine felt was relief. I would appreciate that very much. Thank you, Cole. His smile was gentle. It is no trouble at all. They talked a while longer, and Katherine found herself opening up in ways she had not expected. She told Cole about her parents, about the journey west that had filled them all with such hope, about the struggles they had faced trying to make a life in this harsh land. Cole shared pieces of his own story in return, about growing up in Missouri, about losing everything to disease, about drifting west in search of something he could not quite name. "I think I was looking for a place where I could belong again," he admitted. "Somewhere that might feel like home. The Garrison Ranch has been good to me, but it is not quite that, you know. It is work, it is a roof over my head, but it is not home." "I understand that feeling," Katherine said. "This land was supposed to be our new beginning, our chance to build something that was truly ours. But it has taken so much from us that I am not sure there is anything left to build." "There is always something left," Cole said firmly. "As long as you are breathing, there is something left. It might not look like what you originally planned, but that does not mean it cannot still be good." Katherine wanted to believe him. Looking at his earnest face in the lamplight, at the kindness and strength she saw there, she felt the first small flutter of something that might eventually become hope. When Cole finally took his leave to settle in the barn for the night, Katherine found herself standing at the door watching him go. He paused halfway across the yard and turned back. "I will be right here if you need anything," he called. "Do not hesitate to wake me." "Thank you," Katherine called back, "for everything. For kneeling beside me in the chapel, for coming out here, for all of it. You have been an unexpected blessing on the worst day of my life." Even in the dim light, she could see his expression soften. "Get some rest, Katherine. Tomorrow will come whether we are ready or not, but at least you will not face it alone." That night, Katherine lay in her narrow bed and listened to the familiar sounds of the homestead settling around her. But underneath those sounds, she could hear the quiet movements of Cole bedding down in the barn, the low murmur of his voice as he talked to the animals. The knowledge that someone else was there, that she was not completely isolated in her grief, allowed her to finally sink into an exhausted sleep. She woke once in the deep hours of night, gasping from a nightmare she could not quite remember. For a moment, the crushing reality of Thomas's death hit her anew, and she nearly cried out from the pain of it. But then she heard Cole's horse whinny softly in the barn, heard the rustle of him moving in his bedroll, and somehow those small sounds anchored her. She was not alone. Not tonight. Morning came too soon, gray and overcast. Katherine rose and dressed mechanically, building up the fire and putting coffee on to boil. She was just wondering if she should wake Cole when she heard him at the well pump outside. By the time she stepped onto the porch, he had already fed the chickens and milked Bessie. "Morning," he greeted, carrying the milk pail toward her. "Hope you do not mind that I got started on the chores. Old habits from ranch life, I suppose. Wake up and get to work." "I do not mind at all," Katherine said. "Thank you. Would you like some breakfast?" "It is the least I can offer after all your help." "I would not say no to that." They ate together in comfortable silence, and Katherine found herself studying Cole when she thought he was not looking. His presence had been such an unexpected gift, but she knew it could not last. He had his own job to return to, his own life to lead. She could not expect him to continue helping a near stranger indefinitely, no matter how kind he had been. As if reading her thoughts again, Cole cleared his throat. "I was thinking about your situation here. The homestead, managing everything on your own." Katherine felt her shoulders tense. "I will find a way to manage. I am sure you will. You are clearly resourceful and determined, but that does not mean you should have to do it completely alone." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "What if I came by in the evenings after my work at the ranch? Help with the heavier chores, anything that needs doing around the place. It would not be charity. I would expect payment in the form of supper. Your cooking is far better than the slop we get at the ranch bunkhouse." Katherine's heart leaped at the suggestion, but doubt quickly followed. "That is very generous, but I could not impose on you like that. You have already done so much. It is not an imposition if I am offering. Besides, I have been thinking lately that I could use a project, something beyond just the daily ranch work. Helping you get this place in better shape before winter that feels worthwhile. Why? Katherine asked bluntly. Why would you want to help me? You barely know me. Cole met her eyes directly, his expression serious. Honestly, because when I lost my family, I had no one. I had to claw my way through that grief entirely on my own, and it nearly destroyed me. If I can make that journey even a little bit easier for someone else, then maybe all that suffering will have meant something. The raw honesty in his words touched Katherine deeply. She could see he was not offering help out of pity, but out of a genuine desire to ease suffering he understood intimately. And the truth was, she desperately needed the help. Pride would not keep her warm when winter came and her roof caved in from snow she could not clear alone. "All right," she said quietly. "If you truly do not mind, I would be grateful for your help, and I will happily feed you dinner in return." Cole's face broke into a genuine smile, the first she had seen from him. It transformed his features, bringing warmth to his eyes and erasing years from his weathered face. "Then we have an agreement. I will come by this evening after my shift at the ranch." After Cole left that morning, Katherine stood in the yard watching until he disappeared over the ridge. Then she turned to survey her homestead with new eyes. It was shabby and struggling, yes, but it was hers. And now, maybe, she had someone to help her make it into something better. The days that followed fell into a pattern. Katherine would spend her mornings tending the animals and garden, afternoons doing the endless domestic tasks required for survival, and evenings working alongside Cole on larger projects. He came every day without fail, arriving just as the sun began to sink toward the horizon. Together they patched the worst holes in the barn, shored up the sagging supports, and replaced rotted boards. Cole taught Katherine how to properly maintain tools, how to read the signs of coming weather, how to coax better cooperation from Bessie. In return, Katherine fed him hearty meals made from her garden vegetables, and the occasional game Cole would bring from his own hunting. But more than the practical help, Katherine found herself treasuring the companionship. Cole was easy to talk to, equally comfortable with silence or conversation. He told her stories about his travels, about the strange and wonderful things he had seen drifting through the territories. She shared memories of her family, gradually finding that talking about them brought less pain and more comfort as time passed. 3 weeks after Thomas's death, Katherine realized with a start that she had laughed at something Cole said. Real laughter, not forced or bitter, but genuine amusement. The guilt came immediately after, but she remembered Cole's words from that first day. "The dead do not need our suffering." "That is a good sound," Cole said, smiling at her. "I was beginning to wonder if I had lost my touch for humor." "You have not," Katherine assured him. "I am just out of practice at finding things funny." They were working on reinforcing the chicken coop against predators, sitting side by side in the dust with hammers and nails scattered around them. The evening was warm, and Katherine had tied her hair back with a ribbon, not caring that she probably looked unkempt. Cole had long since discarded his vest, working in just his shirt with the sleeves rolled up. "Can I ask you something?" Katherine ventured. "Always. That first day in the chapel, what made you come inside? You could have just ridden past." Cole was quiet for a moment, focusing intently on the nail he was driving. "Honest answer, I am not entirely sure. I saw the burial party from a distance while I was checking fence lines, saw them leave and saw you go into the chapel alone. I knew I should just move on, that it was not my business. But something pulled me there. Maybe it was God, maybe it was just instinct. I have learned to listen to those pulls, though. They usually lead somewhere important." "I am glad you listened to it," Katherine said softly. I do not know what would have happened to me if I had had to face all this alone. I might have just given up." Cole looked at her seriously. "You would not have. You are stronger than you think, Katherine Rose, but I am glad I was there too, glad I could help." There was something in his gaze that made Katherine's breath catch, an intensity that went beyond simple kindness. She looked away, suddenly flustered, and focused on the chicken wire in her hands. The truth was, Katherine had started noticing things about Cole that had nothing to do with his helpfulness around the homestead. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the deep timbre of his laugh, the gentle strength in his hands when he helped her with a difficult task. The way he always seemed to know when she was struggling with a wave of grief and would quietly offer support without making a fuss about it. She was developing feelings for him, she realized, with a mixture of excitement and terror. Real feelings, not just gratitude. The kind of feelings she had never really experienced before. It was too soon, surely. Thomas had been gone less than a month. What kind of person developed romantic feelings so quickly after such a loss? But she could not seem to help it. Cole had become the bright spot in her days, the thing she looked forward to, the person who made her feel less alone in the world. "Katherine," Cole's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. "You all right? You got real quiet there. Sorry, just thinking. About." She could not tell him the truth, so she grasped for something else. "About winter, how much there is still to do before the cold comes. Sometimes it feels overwhelming." It was not entirely a lie. Winter was a legitimate concern. Cole nodded thoughtfully. "We have been making good progress, but you are right that there is still a lot to do. The roof on the cabin needs more work, and we should probably stock more firewood. I was thinking, if you are amenable, I might talk to my boss about adjusting my schedule. Work longer days, 4 days a week, so I could take every 5th day to help you with bigger projects." "Cole, I cannot ask you to do that." "You are not asking. I am offering. And before you argue, think about it practically. You need the help. I want to give it. And this way we can get everything done before the first snow. It is logical." Katherine wanted to point out that there was nothing particularly logical about a ranch hand spending all his free time helping a woman he barely knew, but she held her tongue. The truth was, she wanted him here, wanted his help, wanted his company. Fighting it seemed pointless. "All right," she agreed. "But I insist on compensating you somehow beyond just meals." "Your company is compensation enough," Cole said, then seemed to realize how that sounded. A faint blush colored his tan cheeks. "I mean, it is nice to have someone to talk to. The ranch hands are fine fellows, but they are not much for real conversation." Katherine smiled, charmed by his awkwardness. "I enjoy your company too, very much." Their eyes met and held for a long moment. Katherine felt her heart rate pick up, felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the summer evening. Cole's expression had softened, his gaze searching her face as though memorizing every detail. "Katherine, I should probably tell you something," he began, then stopped as the sound of hoofbeats approached. They both stood, brushing dust from their clothes as a rider came into view. It was one of the other ranch hands from the Garrison spread, a young man Katherine vaguely recognized from town. "Cole, there you are," the rider called. "Boss sent me to find you. We got a situation with some cattle that broke through a fence. Need all hands to round them up before they wander too far." Cole sighed but nodded. "I will be right there." He turned to Katherine apologetically. "I am sorry I have to go deal with this. Might be late tomorrow depending on how long it takes." "Of course, I understand. Go, do what you need to do." Cole grabbed his vest and hat, but before mounting his horse he turned back to her. "We will finish our conversation soon. I promise." Katherine nodded, wondering what he had been about to say, what confession or revelation had been on the tip of his tongue. She watched him ride away with the other hand, then returned to her work on the chicken coop, her mind churning with possibilities. Cole did not make it the next evening or the one after that. The fence situation had turned into a larger problem involving lost cattle and suspicious signs of rustlers in the area. Katherine tried not to feel disappointed, knowing his work had to come first, but she could not deny how much she missed his presence. On the third evening, she was just finishing her solitary supper when she heard a rider approach. Hope leaped in her chest, and she hurried to the door to find Cole dismounting, looking exhausted but smiling. "I apologize for being absent," he said. "This week has been chaos at the ranch. I heard there was trouble with rustlers. We managed to recover most of the cattle and secure the fence lines. Should be back to normal schedule now." He hesitated. "It is getting late, but I wanted to at least stop by and let you know I had not forgotten about you. Have you eaten?" Katherine asked. "Not yet, but I do not want to impose." "Cole Garrison, after everything you have done for me, you could never impose. Come inside, I have stew left over." They sat together at her table, and Katherine found herself studying him more openly than usual. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and a fresh scratch on his jaw, but there was something else in his expression when he looked at her. Something tender and intense that made her stomach flutter. "I missed you," Cole said abruptly, as though the words had escaped without permission. "These past few days, even with all the work and the chaos, I kept thinking about getting back here. To you." Katherine's breath caught. "I missed you too. The homestead felt emptier without you here." "Katherine, I need to say something, and I am just going to say it plainly because I am not good with fancy words." Cole set down his spoon and looked at her directly. "I care about you. More than I should, maybe, given how recently you lost your brother and how we are still practically strangers in some ways. But I cannot deny it anymore. You have become the most important thing in my life." Katherine's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Cole, I care about you too, so much that it frightens me sometimes." Relief and joy flooded his features. Yes, I did not know if it was too soon, if I was betraying Thomas's memory by feeling this way, but I cannot seem to help it. You make me happy. You make me feel less alone. You make me want to keep going even when things are hard." Cole reached across the table and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm and strong around hers. "You are not betraying anyone by living your life, by finding happiness where you can. And I promise you, I will do everything in my power to keep making you happy if you will let me." "I would like that very much," Katherine whispered. He stood and came around the table, gently pulling her to her feet. For a moment they just stood there, hands clasped, looking at each other. Then Cole reached up and carefully tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his touch feather light. "May I kiss you?" he asked softly. Katherine nodded, not trusting her voice. Cole cupped her face in his hands and lowered his lips to hers, in a kiss that was gentle and reverent, full of promise and restrained passion. Katherine felt her eyes flutter closed as she leaned into him, one hand coming up to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart beating as rapidly as her own. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Cole rested his forehead against hers, smiling. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "I have wanted you to," Katherine replied. They stood there in the lamplight, holding each other, and Katherine felt something shift and settle in her chest. The grief was still there, would always be there in some form, but it was no longer the only thing she felt. There was also this warmth and connection and the beginning of love. As autumn began to paint the Wyoming hills in shades of gold and red, Katherine and Cole's relationship deepened and blossomed. He came to the homestead every day without fail, and together they worked to prepare for the coming winter. But now the work was punctuated with stolen kisses and lingering touches, with conversations that stretched late into the evening, with a growing intimacy that felt both thrilling and perfectly natural. Cole helped Katherine harvest the last of her garden, showed her how to properly preserve vegetables for winter storage, brought fresh meat from his hunting trips. In return, she mended his clothes, fed him meals that made him groan with satisfaction, and gave him a place where he felt truly welcomed and valued. They talked about everything, sharing their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Cole told her about the darkness that had consumed him after his family's death, how he had drifted aimlessly for years before finally finding some measure of peace in the hard work of ranch life. Katherine shared her own struggles, her occasional resentment at the harsh life her parents had chosen, her guilt over that resentment, her fears about the future. "What do you want?" Cole asked one evening as they sat together on her porch, watching the sunset. "If you could have anything, what would your life look like?" Katherine thought about it. "I want to feel secure. Not rich, just secure. I want to know that I will not lose everything when the next bad thing happens. I want a home that does not leak when it rains. I want animals that are healthy and productive, and I want family again." She glanced at him shyly. "I want someone to share my life with, to build something with." Cole pulled her closer against his side. "I want those things too. Spent so many years just existing, just getting through each day. But lately I have been thinking about actually living again, about building a real life. And I cannot imagine doing that with anyone but you." Katherine's breath caught. "Cole, are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying that I love you, Katherine Rose. I am saying that I want to be part of your life, permanently if you will have me. I know it has not been very long, and maybe some would say we should wait, be more proper about things. But I am 30 years old, and I have wasted enough of my life on caution and hesitation. I know what I want, and what I want is you." Tears sprang to Katherine's eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you too. I think I have since that first day in the chapel when you knelt beside me and gave me exactly what I needed without me even having to ask." They kissed as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. When they finally parted, Cole's expression was serious. "I should do this properly," he said. He stood and moved to kneel before her, taking her hand in his. "Katherine Rose, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I do not have much to offer you beyond my labor and my devotion, but both of those are yours for as long as I draw breath." "Yes," Katherine said, laughing and crying simultaneously. "Yes, of course, yes." Cole swept her into his arms, spinning her around the porch while she laughed. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with unshed tears of joy. "We should probably wait a respectable amount of time before the wedding," he said reluctantly. "I do not want people talking badly about you." Katherine nodded, understanding the practical wisdom even as part of her wanted to marry him immediately. "What would be appropriate, do you think? Perhaps after the new year. That would be almost 6 months since Thomas's passing. And it would give us time to prepare, to make sure everything is in order." "6 months feels like forever," Katherine admitted. "Then we will make the most of every day until then," Cole promised. Word of their engagement spread quickly through Green River, as news always did in small towns. The reaction was mostly positive, with the townspeople pleased to see Katherine finding happiness after such tragedy. A few of the older women clucked their tongues about the short mourning period, but even they could not deny that a woman in Katherine's position needed a husband, especially with winter coming. Cole spoke to his boss at the Garrison Ranch, explaining the situation. To his surprise and relief, the older rancher was supportive. "You have been a good hand," the boss said. "Reliable and hardworking. If you want to settle down, build your own life, I will not stand in your way. In fact, I have a proposition for you. What if you stay on as a hand through the winter, save up your wages, and in the spring, I sell you a portion of the land adjacent to your lady's homestead at a fair price? You could start your own spread, still help out here during busy seasons." Cole was stunned by the generous offer. "Sir, I do not know what to say." "Say you will think about it. A man like you should have his own land, his own legacy to build, and it would be good for the area to have another established ranch family." When Cole told Katherine about the offer, she was equally amazed. "This could change everything," she breathed. "We would not just be scraping by, we could actually build something substantial." "We will build it together," Cole said firmly. "Your homestead and the new land will be in both our names, true partners in everything." As winter set in, Cole divided his time between ranch work and helping Katherine weatherproof her cabin. They chinked gaps in the walls, reinforced the roof, and stockpiled enough firewood to last through the coldest months. Katherine's small homestead was better prepared than it had ever been. Cole could not stay overnight. Propriety forbade it, but he spent every possible moment with Katherine. They made plans for their future, sketching out ideas for expanding the cabin, discussing what livestock they would raise, dreaming together in ways neither had thought possible just months before. December brought heavy snows, and there were days when Cole could not make it to the homestead at all. Katherine found those days difficult, missing his presence acutely, but she kept busy with indoor tasks and took comfort in knowing he was thinking of her just as she was thinking of him. On Christmas Eve, Cole arrived at sunset with a small pine tree he had cut from the hills. Together, they decorated it with strings of dried berries and paper stars Katherine made from old newspaper. It was simple, but it filled the cabin with a festive warmth that Katherine had not felt since her parents were alive. "I have something for you," Cole said, pulling a small package from his coat pocket. Katherine unwrapped it carefully to find a delicate silver locket on a chain. Inside were two small locks of hair, one dark like hers and one lighter. "That is from Thomas," Cole explained quietly. "I asked the undertaker before the burial if he could snip a bit. Thought you might want to keep him close. The other is mine, so you can keep me close too, even when I am not physically here." Katherine's eyes filled with tears as she clutched the locket to her chest. "Cole, this is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me. Thank you." She fastened it around her neck, and it settled just above her heart. Then she retrieved her own gift for him, a shirt she had sewn from fabric she had carefully saved for. It was simple but well made, with careful stitching and a neat collar. Cole accepted it with obvious emotion. "This is beautiful work. I will wear it proudly." They sat together by the fire, sharing a simple meal and talking quietly. At midnight, Cole took Katherine's face in his hands and kissed her softly. "Merry Christmas, my love. This time next year we will be married and celebrating in our own home." "I cannot wait," Katherine whispered against his lips. The new year arrived with bitter cold and howling winds. January and February were harsh months, testing the strength of Katherine's cabin and her endurance. But the work Cole had done held firm, and she stayed warm and safe. He visited when he could, though the weather often made travel dangerous. In March, as the snow began to melt and the first hints of spring appeared, they set a date for the wedding. April 15, 1879, almost exactly 8 months after Thomas's death. The chapel where they had first truly met would host the ceremony. Katherine used her limited funds to purchase fabric for a simple wedding dress, and several of the women from town came to help her sew it. It was a pale blue calico, practical enough to be worn again for Sunday services, but pretty with small tucks and a bit of lace at the collar, that one of the women donated from her own stores. Cole commissioned the town's blacksmith to make wedding bands, simple gold circles that represented an endless commitment. He spent every spare moment working on the cabin, building a larger bed frame and a proper table with chairs, wanting to give Katherine a wedding gift of improved living conditions. On April 14th, the day before the wedding, Katherine was overcome with a wave of emotion. She sat on her porch, watching the sunset, and spoke quietly to the wind. "Thomas, I hope you know how much I loved you. I hope you understand that marrying Cole does not mean I am forgetting you or mother and father. You will always be part of my heart. But I need to keep living, need to build a future. I think you would like Cole. I think you would be glad I found someone good and kind." She wiped tears from her cheeks. "I wish you could be here to see it. I wish you could walk me to the altar. But I will carry you with me in this locket and in my memories, and I will make you proud. I promise." The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the Wyoming sky a brilliant blue scattered with white clouds. Katherine dressed carefully in her new gown, her hair arranged in soft curls pinned up with wildflowers. She looked at herself in her small mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back, eyes bright with hope and anticipation rather than grief and fear. Several of the townswomen came to help her prepare and to ride with her to town in their wagon, as it would not be proper for the bride to arrive alone. Their chatter filled the cabin with warm energy, and Katherine found herself laughing at their gentle teasing and marital advice. The chapel was fuller than Katherine had expected. Most of Green River had turned out for the wedding, curious to see the union that had blossomed from tragedy. Cole's fellow ranch hands occupied several pews, and the Garrison family sat in the front, his boss having become something of a father figure to Cole over the years. But Katherine only had eyes for Cole. He stood at the altar in a new suit, his hair neatly combed, his face clean-shaven. When their eyes met, his expression transformed with such pure joy and love that Katherine felt her breath catch. This man, this good and gentle man, was about to become her husband. The ceremony was simple, conducted by a circuit preacher who visited Green River monthly. Katherine and Cole spoke their vows in clear, steady voices, promising to love and honor each other through all the joys and sorrows life might bring. When Cole slipped the gold band onto Katherine's finger, his hand trembled slightly with emotion. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher said with a smile. "You may kiss your bride." Cole gathered Katherine into his arms and kissed her tenderly as the congregation applauded. Katherine felt tears of happiness streaming down her face, and when they finally parted, Cole gently wiped them away with his thumbs. "My wife," he murmured in wonder. "My husband," Katherine whispered back. The reception was held at the town hall, with tables laden with food contributed by various families. There was music and dancing, and Katherine found herself passed from partner to partner, as the men of Green River took turns spinning her around the floor. But she kept finding her way back to Cole, drawn to him like a compass needle to north. As evening fell, they said their goodbyes and rode together to the homestead, now officially theirs to share. Cole had arranged for one of the other hands to cover his duties for a few days, so they could have time alone together as newlyweds. Inside the cabin, Cole had laid a fire and placed more wildflowers on the table. Katherine looked around at the familiar space, seeing it with new eyes. This was not just her homestead anymore. This was their home, the foundation of the life they would build together. "Happy?" Cole asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Katherine leaned back against him, covering his hands with hers. "Happier than I thought possible. This morning I was Katherine Rose, alone in the world. Tonight I am Cole Garrison, with a husband who loves me and a future full of promise." Cole turned her in his arms and kissed her deeply. "I love you so much. I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of you." "You already are," Katherine assured him. "You saved me, Cole. In that chapel when I was drowning in grief, you threw me a lifeline, and you have been pulling me toward the shore ever since." They stood there holding each other as darkness fell outside. Two people who had found each other in their darkest moments and chosen to build something beautiful from the ashes of loss. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, a gentle exploration and deepening of the love they had been nurturing for months. Cole was patient and considerate, and Katherine felt safe and cherished in his arms. They lay awake long into the night, talking and laughing and making more plans for their future. The next few days passed in a blissful haze. They worked together on small projects around the homestead, but mostly they simply enjoyed being together without the constraints of propriety that had governed their courtship. They took long walks through the greening prairie, made love in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the cabin windows, and shared meals across the table that was now truly theirs together. When Cole had to return to ranch work, Katherine found she did not mind his absence as much as she had before. She was no longer waiting for a visitor or a helper. She was simply waiting for her husband to come home, secure in the knowledge that he always would. As spring progressed into summer, they fell into a comfortable rhythm. Cole worked at the ranch during the day and came home to Katherine each evening. Together they expanded her garden, added to her small flock of chickens, and made plans for the future. In June, Cole finalized the land purchase his boss had offered, acquiring a substantial parcel adjacent to Katherine's original homestead. It would take time and work to develop it properly, but it represented security and possibility in ways neither of them had dared dream of before. "We should think about building a proper house," Cole said one evening as they surveyed their expanded property. "Something bigger than the cabin, with room for a family." Katherine's hand instinctively went to her stomach. She had been waiting for the right moment to tell Cole, and it seemed that moment had arrived. "We might need that room sooner than you think," she said softly. Cole looked at her blankly for a moment, then understanding dawned. "Katherine, are you saying you are pregnant?" She nodded, both nervous and excited. "I am fairly certain. All the signs are there. We are going to have a baby, Cole." His whoop of joy echoed across the prairie as he swept her into his arms and spun her around. "A baby! We are going to have a baby!" He set her down carefully, suddenly worried. "Should I have done that? Did I hurt you?" Katherine laughed. "I am pregnant, not made of glass. But yes, we are going to have a baby. Probably in early December if I am calculating correctly." Cole's eyes were bright with unshed tears as he pulled her close. "Thank you. Thank you for this gift, for this new life we are creating together. I promise I will be the best father I can be." "I know you will," Katherine said. "You are already the best husband. Our child is lucky to have you." They spent the rest of the evening making new plans, imagining what their child might be like, debating names and possibilities. Katherine felt a profound sense of rightness, of her life finally aligning the way it was meant to. As her pregnancy progressed, Cole became even more attentive and protective. He took on more of the physical labor around the homestead, insisting Katherine rest and take care of herself and the baby. He brought her small gifts from town, things he thought might make her more comfortable or happy. In August, on the anniversary of Thomas's death and their first meeting, they visited the cemetery together. Katherine laid wildflowers on her brother's grave while Cole stood respectfully nearby. "I wish you could meet Cole," Katherine said quietly to the headstone. "I wish you could know about the baby. You would have been such a wonderful uncle." She touched the locket at her throat, which she wore every day. "But I think somehow, I think maybe you had a hand in bringing Cole to that chapel that day. Thank you, Thomas, for everything." Cole took her hand as they walked back to the wagon. "Do you think you will always come here on this day?" "I do not know," Katherine admitted. "Maybe someday it will hurt less, need less marking. But for now, yes. I want to remember them, want to honor their place in my life even as I move forward." "Then we will come together," Cole said. "Your family is my family, even those I never got to meet." As autumn arrived again, Cole worked with help from his fellow ranch hands to raise the frame of their new house. It would be a proper 2-story structure with multiple bedrooms, a real kitchen, and even a small parlor. Katherine watched it take shape with amazement, hardly believing this solid, permanent home was really theirs. They moved into the partially completed house in October, leaving the old cabin to be used for storage. Katherine walked through the empty cabin one last time, remembering the young woman who had lived there in such fear and loneliness just over a year ago. She was not that woman anymore. She had been transformed by love and partnership into someone stronger and more hopeful. "Ready?" Cole asked from the doorway. "Ready," Katherine confirmed, taking his hand and stepping into their future. December arrived with the first snows, and with it came Katherine's labor. Cole rode frantically to town to fetch the midwife while Katherine waited at home with a neighbor woman who had come to help. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Cole paced the downstairs parlor, wearing a path in the new floorboards, jumping at every cry from upstairs. He had faced charging cattle and dangerous horses without flinching, but the sound of Katherine in pain nearly brought him to his knees. Finally, as dawn broke on December 8, 1879, a baby's cry rang through the house. Cole took the stairs 2 at a time, bursting into the bedroom where the midwife was cleaning a squalling infant. "You have a son," the midwife announced with a smile. "A healthy boy with a strong set of lungs." Cole rushed to Katherine's side. She looked exhausted, her hair damp with sweat, but her smile was radiant as she held their newborn son. "Look what we made," she whispered. "Is he not beautiful?" Cole looked down at the tiny red-faced baby and felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I love you both so much." They named him Thomas Cole Garrison, honoring both Katherine's lost brother and his father. Little Thomas had his mother's dark hair and his father's blue-gray eyes, and from the moment he entered the world, he owned their hearts completely. The early days with a newborn were exhausting and overwhelming, but Katherine and Cole navigated them together. Cole would walk the floor with Thomas when he cried at night, singing old songs his own mother had sung to him. Katherine nursed and cared for their son with a fierce, protective love that amazed her with its intensity. "I never knew I could love someone this much," she admitted one night as they watched Thomas sleep in his cradle. "It is terrifying and wonderful all at once." "I know exactly what you mean," Cole agreed. "Every time I look at him, I cannot believe he is ours. That we get to watch him grow up and become whoever he is meant to be." As winter deepened, their little family settled into routines. Cole continued working at the Garrison Ranch while also developing their own land. Katherine cared for Thomas and managed their home, finding joy in the domestic tasks that had once felt like drudgery. Everything was different when you were building a life rather than just surviving. Spring brought new possibilities. Cole planted crops on their land and purchased several head of cattle, the beginning of what he hoped would eventually become a substantial herd. Katherine tended her expanded garden and watched Thomas grow and change daily, amazed by each new development. On their first wedding anniversary, Cole gave Katherine a beautiful oak rocking chair he had crafted himself during slow winter evenings in the barn. It was perfect for nursing Thomas or simply sitting and watching the sunset. "It is beautiful," Katherine breathed, running her hand over the smooth wood. "You made this. I wanted you to have something special, something that would last, something you could rock our children in for years to come." "Children, plural?" Katherine asked with a smile. "If we are blessed with more, yes. I would love to fill this house with children and laughter." Katherine settled into the chair with Thomas in her arms. "I think I would like that too. A whole house full of Garrisons building a legacy here." As the months passed, their ranch began to take shape and thrive. Cole proved to have a natural talent for ranching, and the Garrison spread, as they had begun calling it, gained a reputation for quality cattle and honest dealings. Katherine managed their finances with careful attention, ensuring they saved and invested wisely. Thomas grew from an infant into a curious, active toddler. He took his first steps in the spring of 1881, walking from Katherine to Cole across the parlor floor while both parents cheered and cried with pride. In the summer of 1881, Katherine discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect, and in March of 1882, they welcomed a daughter they named Emma Grace. Emma had her father's sandy brown hair and her mother's dark eyes, and she was a calm, sweet-natured baby who seemed to find the world endlessly fascinating. Thomas was initially unsure about this tiny interloper, but he quickly became a devoted big brother, always wanting to help with her care. Life on the ranch was not without its challenges. There were harsh winters and dry summers, sick animals and difficult financial decisions. But Katherine and Cole faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each obstacle they overcame. In 1883, Cole officially became a partner in the original Garrison Ranch, his former boss recognizing both his skill and his dedication. The arrangement gave them additional income and security, while still allowing Cole time to develop their own holdings. Katherine became known throughout Green River as a woman of intelligence and capability. She helped organize a small school for the area's children, contributed to the church's charitable works, and became a trusted advisor to other ranch wives on everything from preserving food to managing household accounts. Their family continued to grow. In 1884, another son arrived, named James after Cole's father. In 1886, twin girls, Sarah and Ruth, joined the family. The house that had once seemed so spacious now rang with the sounds of children playing, arguing, laughing, and learning. Katherine would sometimes stand in her kitchen, surrounded by the chaos of her growing family, and remember that desperate, lonely woman kneeling in the chapel all those years ago. It seemed like a lifetime ago, like a different person altogether. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked one evening, coming up behind her as she washed dishes and watching their children play in the yard beyond the window. "How far we have come," Katherine said. "How different my life is from what I thought it would be." That day in the chapel, I was praying for a reason to keep going, for a sign that there was still purpose to my life. And God sent me you. Cole wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "He sent us each other. I needed you just as much as you needed me, maybe more." "Do you ever regret it? The life we have built? It is so much work, so many responsibilities." "Never," Cole said firmly. "This, right here, is everything I ever wanted and more than I thought I deserved. You and our children are my whole world, Katherine. Every difficult day is worth it because I get to share it with you." Katherine turned in his arms and kissed him. After all these years, his touch still sent warmth through her. His presence still made her feel safe and cherished. "I love you," she whispered. "More now than even on our wedding day." "Same here. Love grows, I think, when you tend it properly, and we have tended ours very well." The years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and growth. The children grew and changed, developing distinct personalities and dreams. Thomas, the eldest, showed his father's love for ranching and spent every spare moment learning the business. Emma was quiet and studious, with a gift for music and art. James was adventurous and fearless, always getting into scrapes that gave his mother gray hairs. The twins, Sarah and Ruth, were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and getting into mischief together. In 1889, when Katherine was 33 and Cole was 37, they welcomed their sixth and final child, a son they named Daniel. His birth was difficult, and the doctor warned that Katherine should not have more children. Both she and Cole were content with their large, boisterous family, grateful for the 6 healthy children they had been blessed with. As the 1880s gave way to the 1890s, the Garrison Ranch became one of the most successful operations in the area. Cole's careful management and Katherine's financial acumen had paid off, allowing them not just to survive but to thrive. They employed several ranch hands, had expanded their land holdings significantly, and had become pillars of the Green River community. Katherine never forgot her humble beginnings or the desperation that had driven her to her knees in that chapel. She made sure to help other women in difficult circumstances, offering employment, advice, or sometimes just a listening ear. She understood what it meant to be alone and struggling, and she was determined to ease that burden for others when she could. The chapel where she and Cole had first truly met held a special place in her heart. She made sure it was always well maintained, often bringing flowers to place on the altar. Sometimes she would sit in that front pew where she had knelt in despair, marveling at the journey her life had taken since that dark day. On August 15, 1895, 17 years to the day after Thomas's death and their first meeting, Katherine and Cole took their children to the cemetery. The older children were now teenagers, Thomas nearly 18 and Emma 13. The younger ones ranged down to 6-year-old Daniel. They gathered around the graves of Katherine's parents and brother, and she told her children stories about the family members they had never met. About her mother's beautiful singing voice and her father's terrible jokes, about Thomas and his dreams of California and his kind heart. "They would have loved you all so much," she said, looking at her 6 children. "And I think they would be proud of what your father and I have built here." Young Thomas, nearly the same age his uncle had been when he died, placed flowers on the grave. "I will make you proud too, Uncle Thomas. I promise." Katherine's eyes filled with tears, but they were not only tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude, of remembrance, of acknowledgement of how far she had come. That evening, after the children were in bed, Katherine and Cole sat together on the porch of their home, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "You ever think about that day?" Katherine asked. "When you walked into the chapel, all the time," Cole admitted. "It was the most important decision I ever made to follow that pull and go inside. It changed everything." "I asked God for a sign that day," Katherine said softly, "for a reason to keep going, and He sent me you. You were the answer to my prayer, Cole. You and the life we have built together." Cole took her hand, his thumb tracing over the gold wedding band she had worn for 16 years. "You were my answer, too. I did not even know what questions I was asking, but you were the answer. You gave me purpose and family and a reason to build something lasting." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, hearts full. The house behind them held their sleeping children, the tangible proof of their love and commitment. The land around them represented years of hard work and shared dreams. The future stretched before them, full of possibility and promise. Katherine thought of the young woman she had been, kneeling alone in despair, certain she had nothing left to live for. She wished she could go back and tell that woman what was coming. Tell her that the darkness would not last forever, that joy was just around the corner in the form of a kind cowboy with gentle eyes and a compassionate heart. But maybe not knowing had been necessary. Maybe she had needed to walk through that darkness to truly appreciate the light when it came. Maybe the depth of her despair had prepared her to fully embrace the depth of happiness she had found. "Thank you," she whispered to Cole. "For what?" "For kneeling beside me. For not walking away. For choosing me and this life with me." Cole brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Thank you for letting me. Thank you for choosing me too. Thank you for our beautiful family and our beautiful life. I could not have asked for anything more." As they sat together under the Wyoming stars, surrounded by the evidence of their love and hard work, Katherine felt complete. The grief of her losses would always be part of her story, but it was not the whole story. The whole story included this: love found in unexpected places, family built from ashes, happiness earned through perseverance and partnership. The years continued to unfold, bringing new challenges and joys. The children grew into young adults, each finding their own path. Thomas took over more of the ranch operations, working side by side with his father. Emma married a doctor and moved to Cheyenne but visited often. James headed west to California, fulfilling the dream his uncle had once held. The twins married brothers from a neighboring ranch and stayed close to home. Daniel, the youngest, showed promise as a lawyer and planned to attend university back east. Katherine and Cole became grandparents, welcoming each new generation with joy and wonder. Their hair grayed and their faces lined, but their love remained steady and strong, a constant foundation beneath all the changes life brought. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1909, their children and grandchildren gathered for a celebration at the ranch. There was food and music and laughter, 3 generations of Garrisons filling the house and spilling out into the yard. Katherine stood on the porch, watching her family, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Cole came to stand beside her, slipping an arm around her waist in a gesture that had become second nature over 30 years of marriage. "Quite a party," he observed. "Quite a life," Katherine replied. "I never could have imagined all of this that day in the chapel. Best day of my life, walking through that door and seeing you there. Second best was marrying you. Every day since has just been building on those foundations." Their eldest son, Thomas, now 30 years old and a father of 3 himself, raised his glass. "I would like to make a toast to my parents who showed us what real love and partnership looks like, who built something amazing from almost nothing, who gave us roots and wings. We love you both." The whole family raised their glasses, echoing the sentiment. Katherine felt tears streaming down her face, but they were purely tears of joy. As the celebration continued around them, Katherine leaned into Cole's embrace, still finding comfort and strength there after all these years. "I was so lost when you found me," she murmured. "We found each other," Cole corrected gently. "And we have been finding our way together ever since." The sun set over the Wyoming prairie, painting the sky in brilliant colors, casting golden light over the Garrison ranch and the family that called it home. Katherine Rose Garrison looked at her husband, her children, her grandchildren, at the life they had built from faith and love and determination, and knew that every hardship had been worth it to arrive at this moment of perfect, profound happiness. The cowboy who had knelt beside a grieving woman in a chapel 31 years ago had become her partner, her lover, her best friend, the father of her children, and the foundation of everything good in her life. And the woman who had thought she had lost everything had found more than she ever dreamed possible. They had built a legacy of love that would continue for generations, all because one man had listened to a quiet pull and chosen kindness, and one woman had found the strength to accept the help she needed. In that small chapel in Green River, Wyoming, on a day that began in grief, God had answered both their prayers in the form of each other. And they lived happily, surrounded by love and family for all their remaining days, never forgetting the miracle of that moment when two broken souls had knelt together and found healing in each other's presence.